All right, welcome back, everybody. Today we have Sarah Gwiadowski with us today. She's going to share with us a little bit about what she's doing behind the scenes, everything from where she is with real estate investing to also she's going to give us a little behind the scenes. She just got elected to her recent position with the Board of Education. So she's going to give us a little sneak peek behind the scenes on what's going on in our schools today. So Sarah, welcome to Dirty Boots Capital.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you for having me.
Oh no, so the viewers know we met at a conference. The conference was called Limitless, and it was talking about financial freedom and real estate and all sorts of great stuff. And so you and I got to chatting there, and I was so impressed with your story that I felt it was important to bring it to our viewers and just kind of showcase like what you're doing out there. So bring us up to speed, what you have going on in the background, what you do for work, your family, your real estate position there.
Sure, absolutely. Well, most and foremost, I'm a mom. I have three beautiful children. They're 7, 4, and 3. So they keep me very busy. But in conjunction with that, I'm a practicing real estate agent, and I've had my license for almost 2 decades. And I've loved every bit of it. I've done everything from commercial to residential. And in the last year and a half, 2 years, I got really interested in the investment side of real estate and started to dive into that and participate as an investor myself.
Oh, good for you. Good for you. Excellent. So share with us what you see going on in real estate today. Give us your boots on the ground. We're Dirty Boots Capital, so we like getting our boots dirty.
Absolutely.
So give us your boots on the ground for the viewers, what you're seeing out there.
Sure. Well, I live in upstate New York, and for a number of years, we've been seeing a lot of people from New York City kind of infiltrate our market, and unjustly, they've been taking their valuations from Yonkers, Westchester, all the 5 boroughs, and comparing it to what their capital will do up here and investing in rental properties. And it's raised the bar a little bit, and it's raised prices. But in the last year and a half, with coronavirus and the economy going crazy, that's ramped up even more.
Sure.
So we've seen an influx of investors. We're going way above ask. People were having to foot the extra capital to make the deal happen. And you'd have 45 offers on a property and it would go 100 over all day long. So
is that still happening? Is it still happening today?
Not so much.
No.
The last month, I'm getting notifications of price drops, of properties coming back on the market, of second price drops. So we're definitely starting to see the market correct.
Gotcha. So, for investors, so you're a real estate investor yourself. What's your perspective on the market? Are you feeling like it's a good time to get in because prices are starting to correct? Do you think there's more downward pressure on prices? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What's the scuttlebutt there in your profession?
So it seems to be opinion-based. Things are kind of split. Where I kind of land is I think there's always going to be a deal that you can find. They're always a little bit more difficult to find a deal that cash flows and makes sense, but they're out there. I think the biggest misnomer with the interest rates going up is, well, I might be locked into that forever. If I sign up for a 30-year mortgage, I'm locked in. But I think a better way to look at it is, all right, you can marry the property, but you can kind of date with your financing. Yeah. So, in about, 4 to 5 years, it might make sense to refinance. You could still keep that property and just then lock yourself into a different interest rate. So as long as the property cash flows initially with your financing, there's an option that it might get better down the road.
Yeah. And so that's a key point. And that's something I always stress with investors. I never get into a property that is not cash flowing on day one. Agreed. So what you just shared there is gold, and every investor out there should know, especially if it's your first or second or third property. If you're not a professional, so to speak, doing this day to day, you got to make sure it cash flows on day one. Otherwise, you can get into trouble real quick. So thank you, Sarah, for bringing that up.
I
That's
agree.
gold. Yeah, one of the other things, you touched upon is, you you're not married to your financing. You're just dating it, which I love that perspective. One of the ways these days that I share with some of the newer investors is with the stock market correcting these
Mhm.
days. Um, One of the options people have that they might not be aware of is actually get financing for a portion of the down payment or all of the down payment, or maybe even a good chunk of the purchase price, get that financing from their 401k, right? People can
Right.
borrow from their 401k, and a lot of people don't even know that.
That's what I did
And
with our last investment. That's exactly what we did.
oh, smart, right? Because
Mhm.
now there's a couple of things in this economic environment. Now it seems like the stock market has further to fall, and
Sure.
right, that seems to be the general consensus.
Hmm.
Going into a recession here, right? I don't, I just got back from a conference this weekend, 2-day conference with a bunch of thought leaders, and the overwhelming perspective was we are heading into a recession. There was no doubt there. The unknown is how long and how deep that recession is going to be. So that's the unknown that nobody was willing to really predict. But going into a recession, we know that the stock market will probably drop some
Sure.
more,
Hmm.
if not just kind of chop sideways here for a bit. And so why not, go ahead and borrow against your 401k? You're not withdrawing, you just borrow from your 401k for that
Definitely.
down payment or that portion, right? So
Hmm.
that's a great option. And then another option is being able to, if you already own your primary residence, in this environment where we've seen such great, like you were saying, such great appreciation and or price rises, right, in
Right.
terms of home prices over the last year and a half, 2 years, chances are there's some great equity you can tap into your house in terms of a home equity line of credit, which
Sure.
is going to be, as you know this very well, Sarah, is you can access that as at a much cheaper rate than if you were trying to secure a rate for a rental property. So tap into your home equity line of credit. Right.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. That's great advice.
Yeah, it's so this is why we do these sort of Zoom meetings and try to get these videos out there for folks to get some value and get some ideas on how to get into real estate. Now, what's happening on the rental side in terms of rents and rent increases?
They're just going up. I was actually talking to my son's bus driver the other day. I stopped for a cup of coffee and bumped into each other, and he was expressing some distress that his sister was going through. She's senior age, 60 plus, and just got a notice from her landlord that her rent was going up $800 a month.
Holy cow.
So it was going from, I think it was around 1400. So you do the math,
Yeah.
that's quite an increase. And they're allowed to do it right now. There is talk about rent caps and rent control in New York State, but that doesn't quite apply to upstate at this time. They're kind of zeroing on some of the boroughs and trying to enact that ideology first, which it's not going to work good. Investors, they're just going to dump it and they're going to leave because it's not going to make sense. Their liability goes up with their taxes and insurance going up. And then the government says, oh, you can't raise your rent, but we're going to raise your taxes and your insurance is going to go up. So people are just going to bail out of those markets and they're going to move to where money's respected.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So this is, you're hitting on a key point, because I chat with a lot of real estate investors. I do real estate consulting, and one of the things that's happened within the real estate industry over the last, I'll say 15 years,
Mm-hmm.
which it's been a great 15 years for real estate investing, as you know.
That was
Um,
great. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Phenomenal.
However, like when I started, so I'm old. I started 20 years ago with my real estate investing, and when I started, I didn't have to look at the macroeconomics of things, right? I didn't
Sure.
have to look at, is it a red state or a blue state. I didn't have to look at, really what the economy was doing. Or maybe I should have, but I was successful regardless of that, regardless of what the demographics were, regardless of what the migration patterns were, right? And so today, to be a real estate investor, I think you need to be a little more savvy with what you just said, knowing what's happening in the town, in the community, in the state you're investing in. And if the politicians are going to put these price controls in place, rent controls in place, that it's going to drive investors to go look someplace else where it's easier to invest.
It absolutely is. And, with that being said too, sometimes you don't always have to leave your state completely, but you just need to know if you're not in a landlord friendly state, maybe it's not the right time for you to leave the state, but know your small communities, know the rules, know the legalities, and what state mandates or rules that are going to apply to rent control, if they actually apply in the communities you're invested in or not, before you get too afraid and jump ship. Because we are seeing some people do that, and then they're left with trying to 1031 something and not being able to do it because they can't find anything. Definitely be cautious, but I don't think act completely out of fear and make a rash decision either.
Yeah, one of the things, again, another great point. This is why I love chatting with you, Sarah, because you're so smart on what's happening in real estate and what to look at, what to look for. And the point of, as a real estate investor, nobody knows your local market better than you. So to be able to understand those dynamics, right? For, so to speak, the folks looking to be true active investors and buy their first or second or third multifamily type property, sure, starting in your backyard is not a bad thing, because the community, right? What's happening in terms of the politics of what's going on, right? The good sections of town, the bad sections of town. So in that regards, it does make it a little easier to invest when you know that already.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, that's definitely good advice for anybody starting out. I've known a few people, they're starting out and they just have this mindset that they have to go to a more landlord friendly state, and they're investing halfway across the country. And I hope the best to them, but the numbers are just a little bit more difficult, because then you are absolutely 100% reliant on property management. So there takes another easy 10% out of it. You're not in it as much, so you're not going through the struggles, and maybe you would care a little bit differently than the property manager would. So I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad idea, but I personally am more in favor of starting in your backyard, keeping your investments within 30 miles from where you live, so you can just, drop by. And I like to bring pies to my tenants on Thanksgiving and just happy Thanksgiving, make it
nice.
Like a nice relationship that's just easygoing. You're not checking up on them, but I care about my tenants. And part of the reason I got into this is I wanted to break that mold of slumlord and be able to give value back to people that just wanted a place to live and just weren't quite in the position of home ownership. Or let's be honest, the millennials, Gen X, Gen Z, they don't want to own. They want to pay to use. That's their mentality. So why not give them that and respect them at the same time while being a good landlord?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's so funny that you say you bring pies to your tenants. No, that's a great idea for folks who are active investors, and you need to understand it's a relationship. They need us as much as we need them. And
that's it, Tony.
I bring apples to my I'm in the Northeast as well. So
I love it. I love it.
We have a beautiful apple picking season, right around late September, early October timeframe. So what I do is I pick apples and I bring them to all my tenants, because it's just such a nice relationship building experience. And with that relationship, I think I get more, so to speak, than they get.
I
So
would
maybe
agree.
maybe
Yes.
sad to say, but I mean, they take
Mhm.
care of things better, right? They know you're there for them, and they feel like they can call you should there be a problem that needs to be fixed. So problems get
Definitely.
fixed quicker without festering.
Mhm.
So yeah, for the viewers out there, this is short money here. I think I spend like, I don't know, $300 on apples.
I
Really?
know. I
For
know.
Goodwill? So think about that sort of stuff. And with rent increases, actually going back to the rent increases, it's not just about increasing rents. Sure, we need to cover our costs as landlords, and as whether it be property management increasing in cost, or taxes, insurance, whatever our costs are. We all know contractors cost more these days because of the inflation
Definitely.
of material and labor, everything. It hits us too as landlords. But when we send out those notices saying your rent is going up, I always look to, again, create some sort of relationship there to say, yeah, your rent is going up, but I'm going to install a garbage disposal for you, right?
Mhm.
Or I'm going to install a ceiling fan in your living room or in your bedroom, right? I try to give them some value back, and it's not just I'm raising your rent because I want to be a bad landlord. I try to give some value.
I like that idea, and I might take that one from you if you don't mind. I
Yeah,
really
no,
do.
no,
I like that.
it's free advice.
Thanks.
No charge, no charge. Excellent. So are you still investing?
I am. I am. I have a couple properties I'm looking at right now. One of them, I love the area. I've had my eye on that property, and I told my husband as soon as it becomes available, that's the one I want. But they were asking too much a month ago. Went under contract, and it was one of those, almost I had to check my emotions because I have loved this exact property and I drive by it at least twice a week. And I said, it doesn't make sense. Well, came back on the market, dropped 70 grand because they had an illegal fourth unit. So numbers still don't quite work, but we're getting closer.
Yeah,
So
no,
yes.
that it's so important. You say you have to check your emotions, and you're
Mm,
absolutely right. I remember seeing a building with a real estate agent, and it was overpriced. But I wanted to see where maybe there was some further opportunity. So I'm
mhm.
looking at the building, and she was very, very pleasant. But she kept saying what a beautiful building it was. And it was wood paneling, coffered ceilings. It was historic. It was a beautiful building.
Sure.
And that was her repetitive phrase. Oh, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And I turned to her and I'd say, I agree. It is a very beautiful building. But if, as an investor, all I did was buy beautiful buildings that never cash flowed, I'd be a horrible investor. So you
And that
gotta,
I know. And it's hard to not get caught up in that because there's this ideology that once you say real estate investor, like it's sexy. And well, what makes it even more attractive is beautiful buildings that I invest
mm,
in.
you know,
And it you kind of, again, you've got to catch yourself before you start going down that path where you can say you're a real estate investor, but if you've got negative cash flow and
yep.
it doesn't work out that great. So that's really good advice too. And don't just look for beautiful, but look for the numbers making sense.
Yeah. So how are you making the numbers work these days with everything seemingly still, even with prices coming down some, not
Mhm.
enough, but some? How are you making the numbers work on these properties?
I'll be honest, a lot of them just don't.
Hmm,
A lot of agents just list them, or if they're off market deals, the
hmm,
sellers have this preconceived notion of the market's so hot. Somebody will think this is a pretty building. Will A lot of them sell it on owner occupied. So then the numbers don't have to work so much.
yeah,
You can placate to that. It's beautiful. Can't you picture yourself living in this one and offsetting your rent by renting the other one or two units?
yeah.
And that catches people's attention, and that has helped substantiate the prices staying higher. But when you're a sheer investor going in and just running the numbers, it's a little different picture, and there's a lot slimmer pickings.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I see all sorts of creative marketing being had these days.
Yes.
You would, you know, everything from, kind of pushing it towards, because we all know there's a housing shortage, right? So there are people who would normally buy a single family home, but if they can't buy a single family home, they may be looking at a duplex or a triplex or a quad. And yeah, those listings are being written up as, hey, have your tenants pay your mortgage. And so those people who would buy a single family home are now looking at, multifamilies. And it's really just a new dynamic to the market these days that I've never seen, that we're going through. So, outside of, trying to do some creative financing with maybe using a home equity line of credit, because you can tap into your own primary residence, maybe get some money out of your home at a lower rate through a HELOC.
Sure.
One of the things is, having to go higher on the, or actually lower on the loan to value ratio, right? Instead of putting 20% down, you might need with an 80% mortgage, maybe you got to go down to like a 60% mortgage and actually put 40% down to make the numbers work. Do you see anything happening there, or have you ran numbers that way? What's your thoughts?
I kind of like to leverage as much as possible. So the more equity down, it's not my favorite route, but sometimes if that's just the way that it makes sense, you'll go that route. But I tend to prefer a little bit more leverage because, the opportunity to then refinance down the road, you can shoot yourself in the foot because of your loan, your debt to income ratio can come into play if it's not appreciating at the desirable rate for you, but then you've tied up more equity.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, we're all going through the same thing, right? So
Sure.
for the viewers out there that are watching what's happening in the market, and you feel like you're on an island and it's just happening to you, let me tell you, Sarah's going through it, I'm going through it. I chat with folks who are still buying today, and they're buying, big properties, 200 doors, 300 doors. They're buying big properties, and they're having trouble making the numbers work. And so during this time, it's so important to keep your emotions in check, like you had mentioned, Sarah, right? If the numbers don't work, the numbers don't work, right? You're an investor. You're in it for the money, not just to buy beautiful buildings. So we got to keep our emotions in check, and we got to do everything to make sure those numbers, tie out the right way so it cash flows. Because during these times, it's kind of dangerous if you have a building that's not cash flowing on day one. So
absolutely. And when people were just they were just waiving inspections and due diligence just to close the deal, that was scary because, okay, maybe you were able to make it cash flow, maybe you got the deal, but you waived your inspections, and guess what? You got to spend $30,000 on your HVAC system.
Yep.
So yeah, keep it
scary.
in check.
Scary stuff. I want to balance it, right? It can be scary with all these different dynamics happening today. And it's happening to all of us here, but we're all still investors, right? You're still out there, you're looking, you're running numbers, I'm looking, I'm running numbers. I just got out of a conference this weekend with, I think there was 700 individuals there. Nearly everybody I spoke to, they're still buying. So for the viewers out there, I want to offer that balance. It's not fully taking your foot off the gas with investing. It's definitely more of just being more cautious in the properties you're looking at and how you structure the deal to make sure that it's going to work for you in the long run. So we're all still investors. We're all still looking to buy is the good news story there, so to speak.
I know, and take that opportunity to just learn a little bit more. If you're not spending that time closing deals and finding the deals, maybe just spend a little bit more time and soaking up other people's knowledge, and instead of banging your head against the wall.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great advice, because I just had a conversation earlier today with some guys who do syndications, real estate syndications. And let me tell you, to be able to tap into that knowledge, right? Like you're saying, right? These guys, they do it professionally. They know the market, they know the demographics, they know the migration patterns. Wow, they are a
Mhm.
wealth of information. So even if you're not, an investor with some folks, whether it be a syndication or whatnot, you can still get some good intel by having these conversations or by listening to their podcasts or whatever it is. Take that time to learn. That's great advice, Sarah. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but you're much more than just, you're a mom, you're a real estate agent, you're a real estate investor. I mean, man, you're already doing rock star stuff. But then you just got elected to, I'm going to switch gears here, almost
Sure.
like 180. You just got elected to your Board of Education seat there up in New York.
I did.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So how did that all transpire? I mean, you're rocking it in the real estate world, and what made you go in that route to run for the Board of Education?
Well, I got a text message from a friend of mine back in December that there was going to be a Board of Ed meeting, and it was going to include adopting a policy of critical race theory
Mm.
into our schools. So I attended the meeting, and now the school's not calling it critical race theory. It's called DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Okay.
So it's being repackaged because CRT got such a bad rap. I'm sure everyone's familiar with what happened in Virginia. And so they're reworking it. But if you look at the two of these ideologies side by side, they're very, very similar.
Similar.
So that started the ball rolling. A number of parents and concerned citizens spoke out at that meeting and asked a lot of questions. And as a result, the school board pivoted to all virtual for the next 3 months. So, mind you, all the rest of the schools in our area were not virtual. Some were like you had the option to attend virtually, but our small school district, 600 students, K through 12, very small school district.
Yeah.
We definitely could have gone in the gym and socially distanced. Nope. They just were trying to avoid the conflict and take the easy path of least resistance. So that was concerning when they pivoted to all virtual, which made a lot of us dig our heels in even more. You're trying to silence us. So one of these virtual meetings where they're trying to adopt this DEI policy, a number of us, there was at least 30, 40 of us on the line, and there was technical problems. And none of us were able to be heard. So one of the board members did table it, but they tabled the topic for the next meeting. And the next meeting, only a couple questions were able to be asked. And before that second meeting, we had drummed up support from the community. And in under a week, we had about 250 signatures for a petition against this policy, presented it to the school before the meeting that day, along with a rewrite of this policy to give them a counter policy, come to the table with something. Let's talk about this. Let's have a conversation. Completely canceled us. Went on 7-0 vote, passed the policy, and that was it.
Wow.
So that's really what started me deciding, all right, we're being canceled. Our voices aren't being heard. The majority of the people that still live in our town do have more of a capitalist mindset, more of a love for country and patriotism. And we want our kids to have an equal opportunity, but equity is a much different topic. Equity means something's taken from one person and given to another to procure that they all have the same outcome.
Did you see this coming from the school board? Did you see it coming from higher above, within the governor maybe? Where was this coming from?
So in my research, Tony, this is deep. This is high level. There's definitely federal piece to it. There's the New York State Board of Education, and we also have something called BOCES.
Yeah.
And they're very much controlled by the teachers union.
Yes.
And all of these teachers union, BOCES, and New York State Department of Ed, and the governor, they're all giving guidance. They're mandating things. But the misnomer with guidance, mandate, and recommendation, all of these words do not mean law. They do not mean they need passed. And everything is still at the local level. It's still at the school district's Board of Education level to decide to implement these policies. So the root of the problem definitely lies there. But during Corona, we needed a new superintendent. So BOCES and the Department of Ed so graciously handed us a superintendent on a silver platter with no other options. And the board voted him in, and he, well, has a similar ideology to the one that the Board of Ed wanted.
Yeah, the teachers union and all of those folks.
Yes. So I met with him personally, and he didn't want to discuss anything. He just told me my concerns were circular arguments and we weren't getting anywhere, so we're going to end this conversation.
Wow. So not only are you, on the Board of Education, I mean, you're a parent, right? You're a concerned parent. Who better, right? They are serving you, right? They are serving the community. Who better, right, to listen to if you're going to spend any time, listen to that person, right? To see what their feedback is and how you need to recalibrate, right?
Sure.
So yeah, that's pretty scary when they don't even want to listen to you folks who, you have kids in the school system and should be dictating how your kids are being taught and what they're taught, right? All of that.
I asked that exact question, Tony, and the response I got from the superintendent was, you don't have any rights as a parent to say what your child is or is not taught. You don't have the option to opt them out of what the school curriculum is. Your only option is to homeschool.
Yeah, and so that's something I want to touch on here, but I totally agree with you. There's something happening. Not it's in education. We see it, you and I see it, and a lot of other folks see it, where our freedoms and liberties are at risk with how our children are being taught. There's so much there, but it goes beyond education. So I'll have these types of conversations with folks, and they'll say, Tony, it's okay, don't worry about it. What's the big deal? When there's a Republican president that gets elected, the pendulum will swing in that direction, and then there'll be a Democratic president, then the pendulum will shift. And I share with them, no, it's not just with the political system being stealing our freedoms and our liberties. It's the education system stealing our freedoms and our liberties. It's society does it to itself. And in so many ways, we have the economy is for folks who might not understand it. I'll shoot me an email, leave me a comment down below. I will share with you all the different ways the economy is rigged somewhat against us in terms of stealing our freedoms and our liberties. And then also the monetary system with the way, inflation is everywhere and always a monetary phenomena, and it steals our purchasing power. So there's so many different ways, right here, right now, we are just covering a very small way our freedom and liberties are being stolen. And that's through the educational system. So I thank you, Sarah, for coming on and educating us about this, because your boots on the ground. Nobody knows it better than you. You have kids in the system. You're concerned about that, and rightfully so. You should be concerned about these things. But there's so much more that we need to get out and share with folks. So let's talk a little bit about homeschooling. So that's like your only other option is to homeschool.
It is. If people are interested in homeschooling, I would definitely suggest making sure that you have a support system in place. I was homeschooled up until 9th grade, and it was interesting. I enjoyed it because I was more of a self-motivator, and I loved the fact that if I just did what I had to do in 2 hours, I had the rest of the day to do what I wanted. I wasn't stuck in school for 8 hours. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. But we weren't involved in a lot of other groups. So the social aspect was not there quite as much as maybe would have been desirable. So just make sure you surround yourself with other homeschooling families. Look for co-ops. Co-ops are great. That's that's kind of the route we're headed. And our co-op is going to meet 2 days a week and do a lot of things. And at that time, you have to participate and be an active participant because you have to be instructing your children. If you just drop them off and leave, that's considered school.
Yeah.
So for it to be a homeschool co-op, you have to be participating. So that kind of helps. You're in community with people. And I think that that's really a vital piece to not succumb to the burnout and, getting graded on a little bit.
and there's a lot there. There's a lot to it. I mean, you're educating and you're shaping young minds. This is not to be taken as a trivial thing. I mean, that's a very important thing to do in terms of teaching our kids. We're teaching the next generation, right? So,
Yes.
so your message of community is one I hear over and over and over again, and so that's very important because we can't do it all by ourselves, right? We need to lean on others. And a lot of folks out there, they got to work. They got their W-2 jobs where they got to go into work each and every day. But with a community, you have more options to be able to lean on others, yet still contribute, right? Still,
Right.
even if you're a W-2 wage earner and you got a job, that's okay, but you can still contribute and you have more say if you're in that small community homeschooling environment. So yeah, at least there's a way out. There's an option other than sending your kids to public school. So I guess that's the silver lining.
And I'm not sure how that's going to be received, a newly elected board member yanking their kids from school, but
well, it sends a very clear message.
Probably will.
I think so. So good for you. So Sarah, I want to thank you for taking the time today to come on, educate us. Wow, everything from real estate to what's happening in our school system. So that's tremendous value for the viewers to hear all of that. So any last comments, any last things to share?
Just, don't give up hope. We have a wonderful country, and so many people they've given their lives for this country. And it only took 2% of the population, the real diehard patriots, to win the Revolutionary War. So, you might think that you're just one of 100 and you're not going to make a difference. You will. Stand your ground and speak up and be brave.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sarah. I so appreciate you. I appreciate your time. We'll have you back on maybe in another couple of months, see what's going on in the real estate world and see what's going on in the how the Board of Education is doing. Hopefully you can whip them into shape out there. So thank you so much for all you're doing.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate it.
Excellent.